I think I close these drapes a little bit now. Will that reflect on the camera?
Yeah, I guess.
Hmm?
I guess.
Well, that one can be open, left open, halfway,
Alright.
but that one should be closed, I think. Okay, what do you want to know? My name?
Sure, we'll start with that.
Huh?
We'll start with that.
Yes, thanks. Okay, you ready, or
Yeah, that's a problem.
auto? Okay, my name is Howard J. Taylor. I'm 86 years old today. I mean, this month. But I joined the Marines in 1943, November. I enlisted. I had my choice to go Army or Air Force. So I spent 3 years in the Marines, 2 years overseas in the Pacific. We trained in Hawaii. That was our base on the Big Island of Hawaii. And I was with the 5th Marine Division, and the 4th Marine Division was on Maui. That's the closest island to us. So we used to train out, invade each other's islands and learn how to come off the ships, down the rope ladders and all that, from like 10-day programs, problems at a time. But time went fast, but yet spent 2 years overseas, so time went not that fast, you might say.
Where did you serve? Like, where were you deployed to? When you actually were in battle?
I was in the artillery, 105 artillery.
Okay.
And 105 artillery piece can shoot 8 miles. And that's as far as it goes. But I was trained, I was an instrument man. In other words, I didn't work on pull the lanyard, not a cannon man. In other words, didn't work in the pits. I was we laid the batteries. That was the important part. And we had about 4 or 5 jobs in case one guy dropped out. There was a forward observer. You go up right behind the mortarmen, right, infantry, the mortarmen, and then you got artillery spotters. That's FOs. But then we had another job back in where you changed in other words, we had what do they call it? I forget what they actually call it, but it's a little complicated, but in other words, you had to change the yards. You're talking about yards out there, and you're selected out of a field. Went to school for 10 months in California, but you had to really, like you're looking at a football field, you have to measure off in your own eyes how many. When the shell lands just for practice, for training, if you want a direct hit, you have to know how many yards go left, right, or one way or the other. But the idea was to change the yards into mills, and the mills are on the guns, and that's was the tricky part too. So you got to keep a track of all the ammunition, everything, whatever happened, boy, it had to be down black and white. But we only lost one direct hit. Where there were five men in this one gun placement. One shell hit and killed all 5 of them. It was about into the second week of it, though. We were right next to the airfield, and that was number 2 airfield, and that was where the B-29s landed. And the Seabees were the guys who did all the work and putting the runways in, you know. So one of our reunions, which I've been to about 10 or 12 of them, all different states, but they've had reunions since in the 1950s, but I was never that gung-ho to go to all of them. So I made about 10 or 12, I think. But we met one of the crews who landed, one of the first crews who landed on Iwo Jima, and we went up on the landing field and we met those guys. And from that crew, the original crew, I remember reading about it. We found that out from our reunions, that there's only 3 men from the original crew. There's 12 men in the B-29. There were 10 men in the B-17. And if you remember anything about World War II on the European scene with B-17s, they lost sometimes 50 planes in one raid That's 50 times 10 men. So it was really rough on the generals and whoever's running the show to send another 50 men out, or 500 men out the next day. So that was in a movie. So you can remember that. So what else you got here?
What was the food like?
The food?
Yeah.
Well, in boot camp was great in San Diego. You had all the milk you wanted, which when we were kids, we had 4 in our family, but we were raised during the Depression years in the 30s, but we had 4 children in our family, and there wasn't that much food going around. There was no candy bars like you kids now have, and all those goodies. No Coke. I never had a Coke, and then I never had a pizza until we came home from the service. I lived in Cicero, Illinois, and there wasn't any of that thing. I think the first malted milk place was just before we went to the service, or but that was the only thing we had, really. There wasn't much money around, we delivered papers as kids, that was it.
When you were in war, what did they serve you for like food? Was it just like cans and stuff?
Well, no, the food was always good. When you're in station, like in Hawaii, but if you're in the field, you have K rations, but the food was all right. But then they graduated from that to went to a C ration, a little can, and you had a little candle for heating it up if you want, But on Iwo, there was sulfur in the ground. It was so hot you couldn't even sit down sometimes. But you could put your can of food right on top of the earth, and it was that warm. Oh, really? But no, the food was good. Can't complain about that. So.
How did you feel about the enemy, the German, Italy, or Japan you were fighting?
Well, even to this day, we were just kids. We were 19 years old. We had no enemies. I never fired a rifle, nothing. I had not even a BB gun as a kid, So, but you learn. But no, I had no hatred for even the guy. I saw so many dead Marines and Japanese. But I have pictures of those in my albums there. I have rifles and sabers in my house here, which I sent home through the mail, mind you. I had the Japanese carpenters. I spent 9 months in Japan, occupation duty. After we came back from Iwo, we went back to Hawaii for about April, about 4 months. And so we landed over in Japan in September of '45. There was 1 month after the A-bomb went off, and we landed in Kyushu, which is where Nagasaki is, or was. Well, it still is, of course. But Kyushu was 80% Catholic people and all farmers, really. There weren't any cars around either.
Were you ever wounded in the war?
No, I was never. Luckily, I was never. I had a couple of close calls where you hear the things go over your head, bullets or whatever. But the nighttime was the scariest part. But nighttime they shot up phosphorus shells to make. Well, they're actually to light up the area so that they can see the Japanese coming at you. I'm talking about for the infantrymen, But I spent about I don't know. We took turns going up for FOs, but we lost a couple of men, a couple of officers too. But every 3 days we switched. Sometimes we saved maybe 4 or 5 days, but that was the average. And then you rotate and then go back to headquarters where you put your telephone on and you're talking to the FOs and back and forth. And the CP, the wireman, that was a very tough job. They took care of all the communications, for, the telephones for back and forth. That was very essential. One of my buddies on that picture there, he won the Bronze Star for going out at nighttime and repairing a wire. So he got a Bronze Star for that. We had one of the boys in my tent, he won the Silver Star. He saved he went after he went into a cave and saved this lieutenant. He came from Evanston. He was a school teacher. He was a school teacher who taught us guys how to do this work we did for 10 months at school. But anyway, he was wounded, and Larry went into this cave and shot up a couple of Japanese, but he dragged the officer out. The officer was very badly wounded, but he died. The officer died aboard ship. So it was very sad. I met, after I got home, I met the parents up in Evanston. But no, I still, well, there's only about 3 or 4 that I really correspond with now. But we used to, from these reunions, you know, we knew everybody, and not everybody, but you know, once you're, it was like brothers, you know, really, it was really a good feeling. So if you see a fellow with a Marine insignia on something, you know, that's it. You just talk to him. That was great. Oh, we had good times. Yeah, so we had entertainment. Entertainment had. I was one of the first guys in California. We saw Bob Hope's first show, first or second show of his original cast when he came on the radio, but that was in California. So we saw that. And Bob Crosby was our lieutenant. He was in charge of the band in the 5th Marine Division. Bob Crosby, his brother.
Did you write home, like letters home often?
Oh yeah, all the time. I correspond with. No, I had a lot of girlfriends, and oh really, I correspond. I was writing letters today to one of my friends in the service. He lives out in New Mexico. But we correspond by just telephone now, mostly by phone.
What reminded you most of home when you were overseas?
I don't know. Probably the pictures of my girlfriends. I was going with one gal pretty steady, which I met before I went into service. I was working part-time at Sears and Roebuck on Holman Avenue. And there we met high school girls from Catholic high schools, Providence High School and Siena. And anyway, I corresponded with 3 of these gals. By the time I got home, spending 2 years overseas, they were all married. But it was very good times. We had good times together there. But I don't know, you figure where the years have gone. They go by mighty fast, I'll tell you. No kidding. So take one day at a time. Enjoy yourself, number one. Really. You only have one life, so live it up. That's what our motto is. Live it up.
After the war was over, was it possible for you to put it behind you completely? What parts of the experience have stayed with you?
Well, it took about a good year, I'd say, before you really get adjusted. But the one memory I always had for the longest time, if I saw a truck, like a truck that carried stone or sand, open truck, well, that's how they carried the Marine dead bodies back from the front and went to our back lines where our artillery was, and behind us was where the cemetery was. And that's where in other words, on these trucks were just piles of dead Marines, just thrown up there, you know. But when I saw those trucks go by, you know, I got home, it always reminded me of that. Because every morning, maybe 5 or 10 trucks would go by, because they picked up the dead at nighttime, you know. And that was the one thing that most guys remember, something like that. Yeah, it was no joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compared to the wars today, what would you say was different about World War II?
Well, if they were fighting World War II today, the war would have been over the first week or a month, I'd say. Look what we can do with bombs and stuff. We couldn't do nothing over there because we could not kill the civilians. That was number one. We couldn't go in it with artillery or airplanes, you know, I mean, bombing. They could drop the A-bomb, they'd been over in a couple of days, you know. Mm-hmm. But no, this is horrible what they've been doing. All, look at the men we're losing. And they're still fighting. Those people overseas, they have no regard for life at all. So it's just horrible. That's what discuss most of us vets, you know, all about that. That's terrible. And yet it goes on. So that goes up to the presidents, our presidents, but nothing's happening. So I don't know.
What did you think of the president at that time? Did you agree with his choices?
Well, FDR was great, yeah. You know, he did wonders. He was four terms, as you know, right through the Depression. No, he did a lot of great things, really. How you doing there, Tiger?
Good.
No, he was one of the best, really. But Nixon was nothing. But we've had good presidents and we've had some stinkers, I know. But we're talking about Roosevelt. He was one of the best. Oh, he did a lot for the country, though, really. Yeah, so what else you can say about that? The presidents.
Alright. I guess that's it.
Okay. I asked your son if he was in the photo clubs at school. You know, we had those at our school, I know. I know they do have them. How about horseback riding? You got that at school? No? No, we had that also. Yeah, really. Well,
Horseback riding?
Yeah, well, my son's, our kids went to Central over here.
Yeah.
And my daughter and my son had horses. They had them up on Geneva Road over here. And of course, we moved here in '56, you know.
Yeah.
But the kids, well, they were, say, in the 65, 70, 60.
My older sister rode horses up there
Yeah, well,
on St. Charles Road.
no, this was on Geneva Road, I think. There was a farm or something there.